Um, um,
The dog.
oh, I know what I need to do. I need to mute myself some NDI sources. Like that
Oh
one.
yeah, we don't want those.
No, we don't. They make the echoing happen. Okay. And we are buying time until the Falcon shows up.
Okay.
I would say that he flew south for the winter, but I know that's not true.
He just flies further north.
Yes. Oh, that was a Facebook message. He said, "Be right there. I had to pick up my daughter. Maybe she was in a pit or something. I don't know." In the meantime, we are waiting for the Falcon to get here so we can start the show. If anyone has any questions for us, we were just talking about how much Colin didn't understand Ninth Edition while he was playing games with Chuck. That was a topic, and um, Mitch has got a scissor lift behind him. We talked about that.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, it's been riveting so far. You guys have really missed out.
Yeah.
We've talked about the fact that um, evidently Spaceballs are going to be really powerful.
Does look that way. They look real good.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I'm hearing.
Yep.
Expect to see a lot of Thunderwolf Cav with Storm Shields and Lightning Claws. Or Wolf Claws if we have them. We don't know that yet.
Mm-hmm. You've got
The...
a little extra craziness in your beard today, Mitch.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
It's probably just the lighting.
How about Deathwatch? Deathwatch 208 asks, how about Deathwatch?
Deathwatch are going to be good. We don't know how good until we see the book because it's so complex how their units go together that it's just, how does that even work? Basically.
I'm referring to Deathwatch 208 as a one-issue listener. Which...
Are you covering Deathwatch? No?
I've got a friend like that. Every time I tell him about something new coming up or like a new codex, he's like, how do you think that affects orcs?
Is that Don?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's like, how does that affect the orcs? How does that get? Are the orcs good then?
But
it's a Necron codex, my friend. It's not.
He's so great to talk to, though, that it kind of is worth it.
Yeah, it's always worth the conversation. I just like, I don't know.
Oh, he plays demons as well now. Demons are good.
What a weird set. I got Deathwatch and demons. I guess you still hate Xenos, so you're staying true to a brand.
I just want to play it all. I wish that I could literally take a 7-day vacation right now and just play 40k the entire time. That'd be great. I would do that in a heartbeat.
I think we all would. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great.
It'd be great.
I am the completely wrong audience for TTS. I am the perfect. I am the perfect combination of impatient and frustratable, who also does not want to spend that much time in front of the computer. So I'm like the perfect. I'm like the Venn diagram of things that are bad for TTS. It's very finicky, and a big part of the game for me is like the being at the table is a really big deal for me. If they made a high quality video game adaptation, I would play it nonstop. But it's just not. It's the TTS is not engaging for me. Chuck's played it though. Chuck's done some stuff with it.
I've played, I think, 3 games or so. It was medium for me. Part of it was everyone was learning, and so it's not very satisfying while everybody's learning. I think if I got into some groups who were playing a lot right now, I'd probably be happier. But
It does
Yeah.
seem like it's a way to play 40K even slower.
Yeah.
I mean,
the thing
oh, go ahead.
good. I was gonna say the thing I did like about it, and that I probably should use a little bit more, is it's a way to put the models on the table. Like not to play the game, but just to be like, okay, this is an army list I think is good. I'm gonna pull those models and put them on a table and like see the ratio easier than to try to imagine it and be like, so what does it look like? Like, how am I filling my deployment zone? Can I step out to objectives? That sort of thing.
Oh, he says he's here.
Yeah, just
Hello.
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 Sorry, I don't have video. I'm locked away in my bedroom because it's supper time. So
Oh, so there will be no video from the Falcon. Okay. That actually works well because I only
That'll
made
help
room,
the ratings a lot.
I only made room for 4 people on the screen, and we have a special guest arriving in 15 minutes. So, or so.
All right.
So, super secret guest. So we have
Super.
It's Henry Cavill, right?
That would be great. I would really enjoy that. I would also accept Jason Mewes, who talks about 40K publicly.
Alright.
I think that would be great.
I did not know that about him.
Yeah, he talked. There's a clip of him on, I think, Conan, where he's explaining Warhammer 40K to Conan O'Brien that you can find on YouTube. I think it's
okay.
Conan. It's pretty great though, and he talks about. I think he mentions a Land Raider at some point in the conversation. It's old now. This is not recent. This is like 10 years ago.
Well, there goes the chat. Mob Rules is in it.
oh no,
Yeah.
get him out of here.
Well, somebody's got to have the show that's funny but has no actual good content. I mean, someone's got to do
Oh.
that show. No, I'm kidding. I love the Mob Rules
You
guys.
called them funny.
They
I
are
know.
funny.
He's such a good liar.
They are funny. They are. We can accuse them of not being many things, but they are funny.
Oh no. Oh.
Well, at least
The-
least Danny is funny. Like, we all can agree that Danny is funny, right? Like,
I can't
I mean-
tell them apart, so I just maybe.
Two anymore.
well, John's the one that sounds like he's from somewhere distant and far away that's not America. So
Mm.
it makes it really easy to understand.
Yeah, they're both in Alaska, so
Yep.
But John sounds
Exactly.
like he's from somewhere really distant and
Well, I mean, they're not. It's not like they're in the continental U.S.
Yeah.
Someone says a fine hybrid podcast. What were we? Were we just competitive, or did Pablo have?
No,
a
we
category
were
for
the show your homework.
I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah,
that,
show-
but I don't remember.
Yeah.
apparently we're intimidating to come talk to us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll take it. That's fine. Okay, so
Sure.
we're gonna get started here. We've done no prep, so that'll be great. No, I'm kidding. We've done some prep, but not as a group.
I wouldn't say we've done some prep. Colin's
Yeah.
prepped.
I've
The
We
prepped.
rest
have
of us
things.
here will
your
derail his plans.
Yep. John says Danny is the knowledge, look, skill, and popularity. I'm everything else. So you organize it then.
Yeah, but does that mean you're also the editing? I don't think you're the
Look.
editing.
I don't think Brantbot talks unless he's there, so he's important.
So
I gotta say, the Patreon roast thread has been super fun.
so
Like just getting.
when we started the show, Mitch had all the skill and popularity, and then he stopped playing for a few years, and I passed him. So there's your plan, John. I suggest you somehow get Danny out of the game for a few years, and then you can pass him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just hit him in the head with a garage door. Done.
I wasn't going to be that specific because I thought that might be going too far.
Danny's pretty tall. Like he'll
Yeah.
hear the garage door coming. It's not.
That's the thing about being tall. We get hit in the head a lot. You're gonna have to go pretty hard.
That's why you all
have to
play
go
orcs.
pretty-
I'll just share one story from Charity Hammer that people might not have heard before we get rolling here. When we shaved Alex's head, Alex is an airplane mechanic, and he's in tiny places all the time. And one of the things he said is, I'm going to need to wear a hat. And it's like, why? And he's like, because your hair is how you stop from hitting your head on things. And that was a concept that did not make any sense to me at first. I'm like, no, I hit my head all the time. But evidently, if you're used to hitting your head a lot, you move your head slowly and you can feel things with your hair, which is a concept that makes sense for an airplane mechanic. But for me, as a computer nerd that's clumsy, I was just like, I don't know, I just hit my head a lot.
It's also, as someone who doesn't have hair, literally just protection. It like I used to have hair and work in construction, and I never got cuts on my head. Now that I don't have hair and I'm in construction, all the time. And they're bleeders. It fucking sucks.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So I'm being told that I'm much less loud than everyone else. I have literally no way to fix that. So I'm hoping that that's not a serious problem. It will not be an issue on the recording, but I don't have any...
It might be that the input to the stream is the wrong microphone. Maybe?
Oh,
don't know.
What an excellent point. I wonder if I'm talking through the webcam. Let me check.
Because I think we're hearing you through your normal microphone, and the webcam might be going to stream.
Well, that's an excellent point. Let me go look.
Oh, I'm so excited for those roasts, John.
Oh, snap.
So much so that I specifically asked not to be named.
Do I sound significantly better now?
Oh, man.
Do I sound better now? Or
I gotta say, though, I think Paul Winters wins the roast contest. He's got some bangers.
Can you guys not hear me? All right.
Now we don't hear you. Oh shit! What do we do now?
Oh no, we've never done this
Can you guys hear me now?
before.
Chaos, anarchy.
Everybody, take off your pants.
Can you guys
Lord
hear
of
me?
Flies time,
We're
boys.
supposed to wear pants?
Am I being heard now?
Nope, can't hear you. If that's what you're asking. Come for the 40K content. Stay for the technical troubleshooting.
That does sound like us. It's very on brand.
Huh. Okay, how do I do this?
Come watch Charity Hammer. It starts right at 1. No, it was fun content. Lots of it's all the '90s references that came for in early 2000s. So
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Do I sound do I sound crappy?
You sound good to us. So you
Okay.
sound good to the stream.
All right. Oh, that's great. The stream could hear me, but you guys couldn't. That wouldn't have caused any problems. Okay. Let's get... Oh, it's better. Well, then whatever I fixed is great.
woohoo!
Okay, so let's get rolling here. How do we start this show? Welcome to Best in Faction.
A competitive Warhammer 40K podcast.
I'm Colin.
I'm Mitch.
I'm Chuck.
And...
I'm a bird.
Caca! So with us this week we have special guest Peter the Falcon, who is the only bird I'm aware of that goes further north for the winter. I guess
if only I could get out of here.
If I see any air traffic control jobs in Seattle, I will definitely let you know, Peter. Trust me.
Well, you got to fix this Corona thing first.
Oh, that's true too.
I mean,
That's true too. No, we don't. No Canadians want to come to America right now.
If you
That's
could
an
get on
excellent
that,
point.
that'd be great.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you guys could get on that, in between podcasts.
You know, I checked. Turns out, apparently, we can't.
So we're back. The regular show is going to start again, and we're going to try to do every 2 weeks like we did before. I hope that you guys appreciated the fan fiction with what I was going to say, but that's not right at all. The faction
That's the next section
focuses.
we do.
We haven't finished that yet. I just read the romance article on Frontline. You got to give me time.
So we did a faction focuses. I actually started earlier today making a spreadsheet of how much content we made from the faction focuses. I wanted to get a number of hours, but I didn't get a chance to pull that together. So I'll bring that next time. But summary, it's a lot. And
No.
I'm proud to say that we got about 50 to 65% listenership on each one, which I think is great. Because remember
For
that...
individual factions, that's pretty great.
What's that?
For individual faction focuses,
Yeah.
that's really great.
Yeah, like how many people actually wanted to listen to Imperial Knights? I mean,
Yeah.
like, this is an example.
I mean, I did. I had a great time.
Well, that's great.
I wanted to listen to Tyler. I really didn't
Yeah.
care about anything else.
Yeah, it was mainly for Tyler and then Danny, so that I didn't seem so incoherent. So
Got it. Yeah.
The Tyler audio blows my earphones out. His voice is so low and so smooth that it's just like everyone else is like "Dit-dit-dit-dit-dit." He's like, and I'm just shouting out from Southern California. Like that's what every episode I'm editing sounds like to me. Is this just like incredible dulcet tones of Tyler? So it was very like it was Peter that was on. It was Falcon. You were on with Tyler, right? That was one of them.
No, it was Danny.
Oh, it was Danny.
Danny.
That's right. And Danny was just like giant personality, joke, and Tyler would do no laughter, and then here's my incredibly serious thought on this topic, and it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
I mean, to be
As
fair,
someone who has a voice
Danny's
that sounds like
very-
a chipmunk when Adderall, it was beautiful.
Danny's very used to not getting laughs at his jokes, so it's okay.
Right. So I really enjoyed doing it. I know we all did. Really quickly, the most fun I had was the Craft World Eldar faction focus for the ones that I did. I just thought that talking to people that had very different views on Eldar than me was a great time. Do you guys have a favorite that you did? One where you had the most fun, or you thought you made the best content?
I definitely feel like the orc one was for me.
What was hysterical?
Sorry, Peter, since you were on the other one.
Yeah,
The orc one was really good. It was nice because I had two players who very much believed differently as far as what orcs could do. So it was good to have a bit of a debate.
It's nice to have people that are wrong on the show with you, Chuck, so you can explain to them how wrong they are. That's good.
I had them explain to each other. I delegated that to them.
Fair enough.
I would say probably the AdMech in the sense of like creating content, because it was something that's not really been done, where you're taking players who have expertise in the play style but not in the faction, and trying to shake out some different fruit kind of from that knowledge tree. But for like the most fun, that's tough. They were all a blast. We're just super lucky to have amazing guests. Every time I think the number one thing I took away is every time I walked away going, I was definitely the person who contributed least to that. Yep.
But that's if you're the host, that's good, I think.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's being a host.
I think that on the show normally I talk the most and provide the least value, and that's the combo I like to go for. Like the most amount of talking with least value is what I'm trying to rock over here.
Max Filler.
Exactly. Max Filler is a good nickname for me.
The Burger King of podcasters.
We actually ended up, we were in a town that had nothing else, and we had Burger King the other night, and I don't understand why they're in business. Like when you eat at a fast food restaurant and you think, man, I wish I was eating at McDonald's, that's not a great sign for your franchise.
Yeah.
Anyways, now that I've slimed Burger King, let's continue on. Okay, updates on things.
Real quick, we do still have Space Wolves, Dark Angels, Death Watch, and Inquisition / Assassins coming up
And
for
Drukhari.
faction focuses.
Death Guard and Necrons as well.
Yeah, and Drukhari.
we'll be refreshing the Space Marine one as well, since their decks has been updated.
Oh,
So
Mitch, Generalissimo Fred says the Grey Knight faction focus was an epiphany.
well, that was all Tyler. That was not me.
You picked good guests.
Tyler and Michael
Take credit
Shipman.
where you
Yeah. They were amazing, but that's bringing two really great analytical minds. Me going like, okay, guys, break it down.
Yeah.
But no, it's I'm really excited for all the ones coming up. We have amazing guests. We've got Don Hooson. We've got Sean Sharp for Dark Angels, along with Brandon Grant. It's going to be great, guys.
Excellent. So, let's give you guys some update on some stuff that's going on. First of all, there will almost certainly be Charity Hammer, which is something that I've gotten a lot of questions on. We're looking at I should have looked at these dates. We're not looking at the weekend we normally do it. We're actually looking at 2 weeks after that. I believe it's the 16th of January, if someone wants to look at a calendar and let me know that. But it's the 15th, Friday the 14th, Saturday the 15th, I think, because I think the first
Friday
is
the
Saturday.
15th.
Friday the 15th. Okay, I was off by a day. We can't do it the weekend we normally do because it's New Year's Day, and with COVID, we want to make sure people have a chance to celebrate the holidays and then quarantine before participating in Charity Hammer. So we're going to do it 2 weeks later than normal. The good news is it will still be before LVO lists are due, pretending that LVO is happening, which is not a world that I think exists. But in case it is, we will still have Charity Hammer Weekend before that. We're going to do less people, and we're going to do people that are willing to get tested and are quarantined. You guys don't want to hear about COVID right now. There's a bunch of prep we're putting into making sure it's a socially conscious event and safe. But we will be doing it, and we're going to start the charity drive for it in December. So that's about 6 weeks from now.
There will also be more challenges in Charity Hammer because we have fewer people.
Yes, that's true. Well, we're going to cut down to 2 streams, that's for sure. And we're going to have probably 12-ish people, and basically everyone's going to be on stream for half the time. The attendees have to be cut down because, like, Canada can't come. And last year we had Peter and JT and Jim Vessel and Alex McDougall all from Canada. And
Darren.
What's that?
And Darren.
Oh, and Darren, right. Yeah, sorry. I almost forgot Darren. And then also, we also had Danny come down, who is also basically Canadian. So
it's true. Alaska is Canada.
Right.
It's Canada's hat.
Mm-hmm.
I made a
spreadsheet
of people who can't come, and the Canada list had Danny in it for like 15 minutes while I was making the spreadsheet before I literally took a moment to be like, wait, Danny's not Canadian. He's not nice enough to be Canadian. That's what I decided.
Oh, it's true.
So, I wonder if I've received a message from our special guest. I have. Okay, let's bring the special guest in here, and then we'll keep talking. Hold on.
That's a weird way to talk about Canada or Alaska, John. Canada's sexy stepsister.
Whoa.
I guess if natural resources are sexy, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Let's see if this works here. I'm trying to
oil reserves on that one.
Trying to call our friend here. Let's see if it works. Let's see.
I knew it.
I guessed it.
And making his charity hammer, or that's not what we're doing. Biff Pod, making his Biff Pod debut. It's Ennis Wilson.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me.
Someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. Good.
Okay, so at the moment nobody can see Ennis, and it's very possible they can't hear him either. So let me fix that.
I'm definitely here.
You are definitely here, and we're excited to have you. For those that are not a patron, Ennis is one of the most active members of our patron group. And I really appreciate his views of the game, and so I wanted to get him on. I didn't tell him that's why I wanted to have him on, but that's fine too.
You didn't tell me very much about anything, so no complaints there.
Right? Well, yeah, we kind of scrambled a little bit to get this going. And then Mitch wasn't supposed to be able to be here, so we had to figure that out. Just 1 second. I have to do one more thing, or Tyler's going to yell at me. Who's the one who said
Tyler has never yelled at a single soul.
That's probably true.
This is just a light that I have on, because this is not a good light.
What's a black light?
Ooh, okay.
We would have been blinded by everything we would have seen.
Ooh, there's a Tyranid logo on Ennis's wall.
Yes, there is. It's been there for a long time. It's my one standing love of 40K. So.
That's a love that's often mean to you. That's what that is. That's an abusive relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not going to pretend it's definitely. But I did not going to pretend it's any good to me. But I did take them to I need to commemorate them in some way. Like I had to commemorate them in some way.
Someone says, "Please tell Ennis we can unfortunately hear him." That's harsh. Ennis, first time on the show. You listened to the show. You know what that means. You got to give us a little bit of background on how you got into 40K. Anything you do for the community, podcast or stream wise. Give us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I've been playing 40K for about 12 years now, for about half my life now, which is terrifying. Half my life. I got into it in 2009. I was in HeroScape 2009. I was remember HeroScape models. I kind of played off and on through high school, university, high school, and I got into the competitive scene about 2015. I played my first singles event about 5 years ago. Ended up doing really well. I got involved with the Scottish ETC team at the time. So I've been part of that. I've been part of a podcast called Caledonian Deathwatch Radio, which ran for about 2 years in 2016 to 2018. I was one of the 2 hosts on that. And then I'm currently the Scottish WTC captain, and I run events here as well. So that's kind of my 40K resume. I mostly play Marines and NIDS, a little bit of Chaos sprinkled in there. But NIDS have always been my big love. but I play pretty much anything that's not Eldar because I have standards.
Ooh. I'm gonna try to pretend that didn't hit me right where I live. As the only person on this 5-person stream that plays Eldar.
I owned an Eldar model once.
Yeah, I've owned the models. I've just never played with them.
See, I owned an Eldrad Ulthuan, which I sold. No, I think I gave it away for free because I just didn't like having it in my house.
But Falcon, I know your secret, which is you don't actually play 40k.
Not anymore. But there was a time back in 6th edition where I owned a Farseer because allying in a Farseer with Tau wasn't a bad idea.
Man, I still can't believe that anybody thought that was a good idea for game design.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to starting the show. Thanks for telling us about yourself, Innes, and thanks for being here. We talked about Charity Hammer. Let's talk a little bit about. I have a weird update for me that I guess I should do before the next topic. I am building a new army, which I usually do about every 6 months, and it is a surprising army based on the opinions I've had on this show, and that is that I am building a Space Marine army. And
Hold on, wait, can we all hear it?
I feel
that's a salt truck backing up. That's
what
that is.
No, I refuse. I'm going to be salty about my own army while playing it. I think that's the plan.
Very fair.
Yeah, so
that's the way to sportsmanship.
Yeah, that's right. Bitching about your own army while you're beating someone is really what everybody wants at the table. You're exactly right. Man, this is so dumb. I can't believe how badly I'm beating you.
I mean, like, why did they even let me play this way? I mean, like, look at how I'm just removing your models. God, this has got to suck for you. I hate it.
Well, you know, as the person who gets to play you.
Yeah. Chuck, it was going to say something there, but there's going to be too much truth that I'm not going to be able to handle, so we're just going to... Okay, so here's the deal. First of all, I'm bored. COVID is really boring. I am an extrovert that's used to going to one tournament a month. And we're trying to stream, and the problem we're having on the stream, we're having a couple problems. One of them is technology-based because Tyler lives too far away. The second problem on the stream is that we're learning everything all the time because we're trying to shift around from army to army like I used to do in 8th edition, but the difference is I don't have the reps. I don't literally have the level of experience. In 8th, I could be like, oh, I'm going to play this army this time. It's going to be great, right? Can't do that now. So the other issue is Chuck's bringing the new stuff that's new for him, and then Mitch is going to bring Space Wolves when they're like, we're going to have new stuff, and I have nothing competitive to play against them. Craftfield Eldar there's nothing exciting. I have Harlequins.
No wave servant spam. No Yunari. No.
None of that's good. And Bug Tyranids aren't particularly good, and GSC aren't particularly good. They're fun. All of that's fun. Craftfield Eldar's not fun right now. What?
My heart. I'm trying so hard with Tyranids right now. Yeah. It's not working, but I'm trying.
I don't think they're bad. I don't think they're bad, but I think they're middle of the pack. And so I need something competitive to play, and I don't have anything. And then I made the mistake of asking John Lennon what he likes, because John Lennon has made 2 of my favorite lists that I've played at tournaments. Well, I think he's made a 3rd. So I am playing White Scars. I do not think Harlequins are top tier, but we'll talk about that later. That's actually literally in the agenda, so we'll come back to that. Someone there in the chat, they're asking me about Harlequins. And I also don't have a Harlequin army, really. I have bits and pieces from other people's collections that aren't painted and put together, and I don't personally want to do that project right now. So I am not, and the other interesting thing about this is I am building a Space Marine army that I am going to paint. Stephanie is not painting it. Stephanie has, her art business is taking off, and she is in her first gallery, which is very exciting, and she has a bunch of inventory to make for them so they can sell her stuff. So that's what's going on with me.
I'm going to add one more to that, Colin. One more reason for that. Streaming-wise, we've been missing having a Space Marine.
Yes.
So it's going to be good, particularly in this place where we can't go out to a tournament. If you and I play a bunch of different Xenoses against each other, we don't ever get that Space Marine influence. Nope. And so we sort of feed our own failed meta idea. So having some Space Marines in the mix to play and try out is really going to help us have a better understanding of the game.
Yeah, I agree. And that was a big thing. That was a big thing because, like, we just don't, like, I've been proxying Marine armies to stream, and people hate that. They can't tell what the models are. They don't want that. So not only do I want an army, but I'm going to airbrush it bright colors so that you guys can easily see the models from the top camera. So, someone says, I would never play Marines, but if I had to, it would be Scars. Good choice. I'll take that. They are not taking over my love. If Eldar gets a good book, I will drop them like something that you drop quickly. Something very hot. I don't know what that would be.
A potato.
A hot potato? All right.
A lava base.
Here's something else that's happening that you guys can be excited about. Not this Saturday, but the first Saturday in November, we are going to do a tiny 4-person COVID responsible RTT at my home. It's going to be Chuck and Colin and Peter, who's been on the podcast, and it's also going to be Paul Winters making his stream debut for us. Paul is going to play Slaanesh Demons, Chuck is going to play Necrons, I'm going to play White Scars, and Peter's going to play Harlequins. So we're going to play 4 of the things in the game that are currently said to be good. I am hoping, I've not literally had a chance to talk to Mitch about this yet because it's a brand new idea, but I'm also hoping that we can have Mitch come run the stream and do some hand cam and stuff. We'll see if Mitch's schedule works that out. I tried 3 times today to open a text message to Mitch and ask him about this, and all 3 times I got distracted by planning this episode. So we'll see if we can't get Mitch out here for that. Okay. So that's what's going on. And we will there's also a potential chance that we might have a Tyler and a Michael Tempe visit for my birthday in the second weekend of December. And we might need to do some sort of stream event for that. That's also a thing that might happen.
That would be cool.
Those are all good practice runs for Charity Hammer too to help us.
Yep.
Because it's going to be complicated doing all the safety stuff around that stuff. So
the big takeaway I have about the stream is watching Art of War streams. The hand cam is really huge. And in Charity Hammer, we have an extra person on every stream that can literally do the job of, they have a camera on a little stand and they just place it on the table aimed at wherever the most exciting place is. And then they just pivot back and forth between the camera. Procedurally, that's incredibly easy for us to incorporate. So I'll see about doing that. So that's the news. Chuck is also working on a new army. I don't know if we've announced that yet.
You gave it away a couple minutes ago.
Oh, did I? Okay. Oh, I did because you're playing Necrons. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Anus, you're not working on a new army. You're trying to make Tyranids work.
I'm painting 190 gaunts at the moment. It's hell. I don't deserve this.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Didn't you just get done painting like 100 Ripper Swarms?
Yeah, I painted 50 Ripper Swarms. I painted an entire Death Guard army. I've bought like 4 armies over lockdown. It's not been good.
Is it
just compulsively bandwagoning?
You're not spending money going to tournaments, right? So it's got to go somewhere.
Travel budget goes right into the kits.
Yeah, pretty much. So, yeah, I've painted probably 10,000, 12,000 points over lockdown so far, and I'm on track to paint another couple thousand. Wow. And I've played like 10 games, 20 games. It's great. It's great. I don't hate this at all.
Okay. So here's what's next. First of all, if you're watching the stream right now, we appreciate you. Please feel free to ask questions. I will work them in. Here's where we're going to start. We did a podcast once we had all of the 9th edition rules and had not played the game. And then we did a podcast the day after we had played a whole bunch of games. We also did podcasts leading up to the 9th edition rules. And in those, we told you guys what we thought 9th edition was going to be like. Fun fact, we were super wrong. So, really wrong. I went back and listened to part of it, and it's just like, you ignorant people. It was not good. So, what I'd like to do is start with talking about things that we were wrong about. Now, I didn't make a list or anything. I think that we all remember enough about what we ourselves believed that we can kind of go around here. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to have each of us share something that they either said publicly and were wrong about. In my case, that's really easy. I did lots of that. Or something that they believed would be the case and is not. I just want to talk about what 9th edition's actually like by reviewing our expectations. Would anybody like to go first? I can go first if need be.
Yeah, I gotta do that so I stall for time.
Okay. So.
And Mitch ran away, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Rich had the right idea. Never face accountability online.
We did a podcast where I talked about how worried I was about Tyranids. And the reason I was so worried about Tyranids is because I felt that the 9th edition rules had, quote, destroyed close combat, unquote. And that I was worried that close combat would be terrible in 9th edition, and every rule seems to be headed that direction. Because if you think back, right, you can't hug like you used to, right? The board is closer, which is good for close combat, but also means you can get shot easier on the first turn. There is, and there were other, Overwatch isn't as big of a deal, helps close combat. There were other things that were like bad for close combat, and we talked about all of them together, and we said, hey, this is a real issue, and I think it's going to make close combat armies not perform. Man, was I wrong. I think close combat is better than it's been in all of 8th edition into now. I'd be super interested if any of you want to disagree with me on this, but I think watching how the game actually plays, 9th edition is a fundamentally different game than 8th edition. From the moment you start to the moment you finish, it is a different game. It feels completely different. There's more terrain, you're closer together, you don't need to kill each other, you don't need kill more, you're pivoting around the table, and everyone wants to hold the middle. That's a big thing too. There's lots of reasons to hold the middle. So what I'm finding is that close combat is huge, and in fact I have the most fun playing Dark Angels close combat followed by White Scars close combat. So I was just really wrong on that. I think it's in a better place than it's been. You can't hug people and trap them and be safe that way, and that makes the game super different. And also interrupting is quite different, right, because of the way they're doing that now. But it's just excellent. And someone else says, close combat helped by the rules of Blade Guard. Blade Guard's just an example of what's good. Harlequins are good. They're all close combat. Slaaneshi demons are good. They're close combat. Just close combat is good. Armies with close combat are good. Orcs are good. They have close combat. Does anybody want to disagree with me?
Well, no, I kind of just reinforced it a little bit. In 8th edition, what I used to tell myself was like, you get a tactical marine versus an assault marine, right? The tactical marine shoots you twice, then charges in and attacks you once. And the assault marine shot you once, charged in and attacked you twice. It was the same number of strength 4s hitting. It was the same amount of damage. In 8th edition, it wasn't important that you moved into that other position. But now that the objectives are towards the center, and you're trading back and forth trying to take those objectives as things go, it makes that close combat more important because you want to get your models onto your opponent's objectives. And shooting at them doesn't do that. It just removes their models.
And saying that another way, Chuck, if everybody's going to be on the objectives together, you're going to end up fighting.
Yeah, you end up in a fight, right? And then we've seen so far, right? Like that makes assault more valuable. And then we're seeing now people are being like, well, then I need also to be OBSEC.
Right.
You want like OBSEC troops that can beat things up and take objectives back over are kingpins in this linchpins in the game right now. I think it's because of that, right?
Yeah. I'd be interested to hear Innes' thoughts on this because you're primarily playing close combat armies, Innes.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
So I don't disagree. I just think there's slightly more nuance to it. I think the ways that you used combat in 8th edition, you saw a lot of, we have our hammer unit and this goes in and it kills 2,000 points of our opponent's army and we win that way. You saw that with like Double Spear Ynnari and Aberrant and Blood Angel Sanguinary Regardless. They all did one thing. They went in, they wrapped, you couldn't shoot anything. Nowadays, combat isn't that because you can't do the multi-charges that you used to be able to. You're now using it to peace trade. So you're saying, you have a thing on that objective, now I have something, you need to come and deal with that. And you play back and forth until you can't deal with each other. And that person broadly wins. And that's more interesting, but it does mean that combat as a whole is weaker because it's not being used to win the game. It's being used to grind away at the game, I would say. So you're using it as sort of as a supplement to how you play the mission rather than combat being a win condition now.
Okay, I see that.
I would agree with that.
I would argue that, hold on, Peter, let me say one thing. I think that the whole game is grind at them now, right? Not just close combat. So I think you're right, and I would even exaggerate what you said.
That's how the game has changed. But it does mean that stuff that was really good in combat in 8th edition, so your Gene Stealer Cultist, they could go in, wrap, stand there forever, and win the mission because you could never get onto the board, now can't do that because that's just not a fundamental playstyle that works, and that's pushed up a lot of armies like Harlequins that have a lot of small units that can do that, whereas armies like Gene Stealer Cultists that rely on a couple of big units of Acolytes to do it now have much less place because they can't do the peace trade because their pieces are so expensive to be reliable and you need so many more of them. So it's just shifted the way Melee works. It's not made Melee bad. And I would argue that things like the Desperate Breakout Stratagem and how much harder it is to do piling consolidation with the coherency rules now were required so that Melee wasn't absolutely ridiculous at grabbing objectives. So all the changes that looked like they were, oh my god, combat's dead, were to make sure so that combat had to change from what it was in 8th edition, where it was, if you were a better player than your opponent, you could win without ever having to actually kill a model through combat. Yeah. You didn't have to take any chances. And that wasn't healthy. It was fun, wasn't healthy.
Yeah. All right, Peter, what were you going to say?
I was just going to reaffirm what Innes is saying. If we look at what factions are winning, it's not so much that they're wiping out their army. It's they're winning the battle of attrition. They're capable of getting stuck in, as someone mentioned, like Blade Guard veterans. Like the reason why they're so good isn't just because if you make them Blood Angels or whatever, they're going to kill everything. Salamander Blade Guard veterans just don't die. So they can sit on objective. You can give them a objective secured, and just 3 guys are going to hold off 10 or 20 of maybe your opponents often. And when you look at something like Orcs, kind of a surprise faction for a lot of people, it's like they're not actually killing a ton of models, right? They're dying in droves, but they're lasting to that like round 4 because they're trading well enough and they're getting stuck in long enough that they can take the primaries they need. So.
McBray, and I have no idea if I'm saying your name correctly, he says the big one is the goal isn't just to table your opponent. If you fail to play the objectives, you lose the game, and that's very well put, right? Mm-hmm. That's really what the change is. In fact, we're seeing Chuck and I are the ones primarily playing from the show, and we are seeing that very few of our games end in a tabling, even really lopsided games, Chuck, right? Even games with big score differences. It's still turn 5, and whichever one of us has lost has 5 bottles left around the table in different places, right?
I think importantly, that's not a thing that we're even pointed at, right? Like the mission's changing to not caring about what you kill, unless you take secondaries to or whatever, makes a big difference. Right. Exactly. Your goal isn't to kill your opponent's models; it's to take space.
You're also forced to be in the center of the board, which means that models that are out towards the edges are just less vulnerable now. In some missions where you had like player-placed objectives in ITC or ETC formats, you could have it so that you had very pushed to the edges of the board. You might have had 2 or 3 objectives in your deployment zone in some missions. Now that they're all in the center, it's much easier for a model that runs up the side to grab an engage on all fronts point to just not be in the way of anything that can actually kill it. So the games just don't end up tabling because you're not in a place to lose those models.
Yeah. Right. Even if
and with the one less turn as well.
You can't give up the ability to focus. That you can't give up the firepower to send that direction. Even if you could, the way obscuring terrain is working and such, it's possible you might not be able to put the shots in. Right? There's multiple ways that unit survives, both through sort of pressure from the rest of your army. Mm-hmm. In addition, so.
Somebody in the chat says, Shuma Games says, well, you have to play the objective and also go first so that you can participate with the objectives before turn 3. And Shuma, I really appreciate your comment. I would disagree. I strongly agree with the Art of War guys that going first is not that important. It's if you build your list and you find that you have to go first, you should take a step back and think about how you can build your list differently, is what I would argue.
Or stop playing Tau.
Or possibly just deploy it differently.
Yeah.
Like, in a lot of go first metas, I feel like a lot of people, what they're doing is they're not understanding the nuance of how they want to deploy. If you deploy in such a fashion that all your opponent can do is step out in the middle of the table, and then when you go second, you get to shoot and charge him before he does anything, and then you take all the objectives and they don't score anything, like that it wasn't a benefit to them.
Right. Yeah, I think that Chuck and I are seeing that, we know each other's playstyle pretty well, so it changes a little bit, but we're finding in a lot of our games that we don't know which one of us wants to go first. Like when we do the roll and we don't know. It's not at all clear who should go first. So I don't agree at all. As a stats nerd, I don't think the Goonhammer stats are good at all. I like Goonhammer a lot. Those guys are great. But their stats article on going first, maybe we should have them on and we should debate it. That could be a thing that we do.
So I would argue their stats are pretty good, especially after their second article.
Hold on. I only saw the first one, so maybe you should talk about this, Peter.
So, we've got about 25,000 games worth of data now, and about 10, I want to say it's 10,000 now, where we know who went first and second because of ITC Battles app, and to a lesser degree, BCP and DUP. Like, there is a advantage to going first in this game. I don't disagree with you, Colin, that it can be played around.
Colin.
I just want to say, like, it exists. Statistically, it very much exists given the amount of data we have. It's just, how do we teach people to play around it?
Yeah, I think that's probably it, right? People are playing armies that were good in 8th edition, and that throws the data way off, right? They're not
potentially.
Planning.
I mean, the thing is, the numbers have stayed the same for 3 months.
Right. Yeah.
Like we've checked data to day, right? I've been helping them on the latest contribution, and so like the data is very firm that it exists. It's just like, in order to be sure it's an actual issue or not, which I don't personally think it's an actual issue. There is a fundamental way the game is designed where going first has a bit of an advantage. But if you're designing your list with that in mind, then that mostly goes away, or it goes away completely. It's the same with terrain, right? There's a lot of talk about, are people using correct terrain when they're doing this? And that's another factor where we've really not gotten firm, this is how you should set up a table from, say, GW or something. And that would be something that would be beautiful in terms of kind of nipping some of the arguments in the bud and getting a firm decision on like where this problem, or if it is a problem, lies.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I'm with you in that I think that we just have to, most people just need to develop a better way of thinking around it. But if you look at 8th edition, there was also a slight belief that there was a first turn advantage, at least until ITC changed its mission format. They only had about a 53% win rate going first, versus right now we've had a static 58 to 62 depending on the mission in 9th. So it'll be interesting to see. So it'll be interesting to see how that carries, right? Scouring is, I believe, the one-off example where it isn't, because it has 4 objectives. And that only, I believe, has been sitting around a 53 to 54, which is, to me, like a generally acceptable amount. Anyway, like all this to say, I don't think you're wrong. I think if you are building your list with the idea that there's a potential go first advantage and I need to mitigate that, then that goes away, right? Because you're mitigating the issue. Versus if you're building a list to go first because you know that there's an advantage there, like that's going to cause problems. Anyway.
Right.
Well, I think
Go ahead, Mitch.
We've seen this in other editions where, let's just take a non-starting first thing, like wrapping. Wrapping is a thing from 8th edition where you could, tie someone up in combat. It was like, that was something that was spawned out of adapting the rules of the game and a play style to deal with shooting armies. That didn't, people weren't doing that the second 8th came out. Like, that was a tactic that was developed over time. So there's always going to be a maturing period for a rule set, and I think that it's easy for people to say, "Oh, well, look, anyone who goes first just wins." And it's easy to point at numbers and it's easy to say those things, but then the question becomes, okay, cool. How much have we tried to mitigate that? And at that point, if we aren't seeing people come up with successful play styles to mitigate it, then it's a problem. Mm-hmm. But if people are and I'm not talking about the highest level, but if people are being like, well, no, you just do this, you want to have your chaff units, you have these units, you have a dip, we have to look at a recategorization of how we think about every unit's role in 40K in the 9th edition. And that's just going to take time. I mean, edition bleed is just a thing. And, a lot of people, I mean, heck, we all know the guy who's still playing his Imperial Guard tank brigade, from 4th edition, and he's never really changed his tactics. Those people aren't going to do better.
But all of his tanks are named. Something. But they're all named, special names.
Oh, they're super cool. They're super
And the paint jobs are great, and they've been kit bashed with metal bits over the years.
Yeah, absolutely.
An interesting point here that is fair, and I want to make this point without overstating my competence at the game, because I don't feel competent at all right now. But let's say that can I say I'm in the top 20% of the game of players? Is that okay? Is that not too? Sure. So there's also a difference between the game that I play and the game that the average player plays, because I play more tournaments and I'm experienced and I practice a lot. And we saw that a lot with Ynnari. The problem with Double Spear Ynnari wasn't that it was unbeatable. That was never the issue. The problem with Double Spear Ynnari is that the only people that could beat it were incredibly experienced, very good players. That was the issue. And so it could be that what I'm seeing is a John Lennon, who I think might be this is a hot take that John will be embarrassed for me to say here, but I think John Lennon's probably the best player in our country right now, based on the streams that I'm watching. I think Sigler and Nick are still amazing, but John seems to be winning more games than they do. So their games.
I actually would like to highlight that point real quick. I believe if we go back to the first Charity Hammer, you can go and hear me on a recording say that in 2 years, John Lennon will be the guy to watch in Warhammer 40K.
And I think he is right now. But we don't, without a tournament season, it's hard to know that, but I think he is at the moment. But he and Richard and Nick aren't seeing going first being a big deal, but they're playing at a very different level than everybody else. And I think that's an important
they're playing
point.
each other.
That's
so
true too.
The quality of play, like that, what happens in that house for 40K is its own little ecosystem of playing and competing, and like there's such a different level of skill for every single player that's doing that. It totally kind of warps what you see, not in a bad way necessarily, but it's you're not taking like that. None of what they're doing is necessarily going to matter for the lower and mid-tier players that are feeling like going first has a hugely strong advantage because it's just such a high level of play.
I think
they're also a lot playing on a very specific set of terrain.
Yeah.
Each of their terrain sets is built a very specific way that allows you to hide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think about particularly like some of the small store RTTs and stuff I would go to and how the terrain is set up. I haven't played any games that look like that, and that would change things drastically. So possibly we're just having a conversation of like, well, in my meta, this small thing is different from what is in yours, and so things are just very, very different. We have just completely different experiences.
I think there's a lot there, and I think like something that I brought up early when the first kind of Goonhammer article came out, and it's something that I've been thinking about pretty frequently, like for the last 2.5 years as I've collected the data, is like there does come a point where we have to consider, if we go in this route of discussing game balance, and is this an issue, is it not, like who are we balancing the game for? Is it for the regular player, like Mitch said, who has seen this advantage, or is it for like the upper tier that doesn't care? Because they're building for it. And then to go, if you look at like the Trap House, this like all of these guys are building their lists in a very specific way because they've kind of created their own little mini meta, and so maybe that has some impact on it as well. Like there's so much going on, and it's so deep. But from a purely statistical analytics perspective, there's definitely an advantage. It's just whether we, I guess, need to care or not is where I would leave it.
It's whether it'll get calibrated out.
Yes. I think that we should. Yeah, I think we should move on with. I think our general answer is we don't know, right? I think that's statistically, yes, going first is better. The top players are all mostly saying that they don't agree. So that's all something we'll see as we get further along. Several of you mentioned the thing that I think is the real topic here, which is I'm concerned that the train that Chuck and I are playing on is not preparing me for tournament play. That's the thing that I'm worried about. Because what's good in heavy terrain is not good in light terrain in 9th edition. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something that I'm hoping GW will be louder about, or tournaments will all talk to each other. I'm hoping that we have some standardization there. I think that's a really big deal.
I think, and this is just like slightly like from more of a TO perspective, like everybody's hurting for money. It's 2020. There are no events. Like game stores are like their revenues, like are going to be, up and down. Like everyone's having hard times. If you want to see more terrain at, say, your local store, why not go in and offer to help build some? Like if that's something you want to see be different, be part of the solution. Don't just say, hey, you need to buy more terrain, because they're going to be like, cool, I need you to buy a lot more models before we can do that right now. So that's just something to consider. Like there is an adaptation period of time where all of these, like if you're running a GT or, a major, obviously we're not seeing any majors right now, but if you're running something like that, and you had, say, lighter, more Adepticon-y tables before, it's not a small amount of money and time to get that back up to where, maybe 9th needs it to be for that to be consistent. So, that is something to be aware of. If it's great to tell your TO, hey, we want more terrain, but it's better to be like, hey, how can I help make that happen?
I think that's great. That's a great point, Mitch. And I think I speak for all of us when I say the more terrain, the more fun as well. Okay, so we were going to talk about ways we were wrong, but that conversation covered many of the things that are different about 9th. We talked about terrain, about going first, about how you interact. Does anybody have a hot take on something that they were wrong about that they want to share before we continue on?
I didn't think the board size reduction was going to be as big a deal as it is.
Yeah. Okay.
That's, I think, the thing that I dismissed it. I was like, I went from 8x4s to 6x4s, and I was like, no one even cared or mattered. The game is so much more compact. It's very different.
We saw Crimson Hunter Exarchs just be terrible, right?
We saw planes just disappear.
I had no way to move them in a safe fashion on the smaller table.
Yeah.
We haven't let Innes talk in a little while, and I like hearing Innes talk. Do you have anything you were wrong about that in ninth, or ways that ninth surprised you, Innes?
I think you're muted.
I'm muted?
No, Innes. No, we're not hearing him.
Innes, we don't hear you.
Innes is dead. Long live Innes.
I can see him moving. I don't think he's dead.
I mean,
can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah,
there you are.
Okay. Sorry, my mic must have just blanked out. Yeah, I want to touch on the board size thing quickly, where I hadn't actually felt that it changed that much. I don't know if that's just the fact that I'm playing a lot of melee armies, but it feels like playing the sides of the board and playing into your opponent's backfield just doesn't matter as much anymore. Even if we were playing on the bigger boards, you wouldn't really notice, just because you're not fighting out on the sides of the board. You are pushed towards the center.
Mm.
Yeah,
or is it more the mission design pushing you to the middle, or is it the actual missions, or is it actually the board size?
Well, for me, it's the mission, the board size, and the last bit being the amount of terrain and the amount of obscuring terrain. There really isn't. You don't want a model that shoots 72 inches with a super big gun if it doesn't ignore line of sight. It's not going to be able to shoot anything. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, sightlines are a lot harder now.
Yeah, that's one of the things that Chuck and I have talked about a lot. Is someone should never be able to shoot their entire army into one thing of your army, and that's a huge change. Right? Mm-hmm. Like in 8th edition, it was regular that you'd have this death ball, this really important power thing, and the first turn of the game was your opponent's entire army shooting it. And that should never, in my opinion, in 9th edition with the train supposed to be, that should never happen. And it makes things
last longer. You all need better
terrain. What's that?
You all need better terrain, man.
Well, it depends on what story you go to.
Here for like 2 years. Well, we've used the ETC rules packs for a couple of years, so that's just not been a thing for us for a long time. The terrain that you're seeing on like the our Warstream that you guys were talking about would have been considered a light board here in 8th edition.
Right. I agree. Yeah, we have. It depends on our store here, but like the Nova train that everybody loves so much. I went to Nova. I got shot to hell.
Terrible terrain.
On that train. So, anyway, okay. So, Peter, did you have something that surprised you about 9th edition?
I think most of the stuff you guys talked about was either at least a slight shock at how extreme it was, close combat in particular. I knew it was still going to be worth it. I just didn't realize like how crazy it was going to be. In terms of like factions, the Craft World sucking as much as they have was a surprise to me, because they just always seem to find a way, and so far they haven't. So that was my big like, whoa, what's happening here? Why are you guys so bad right now?
I really believed in Wave Serpents. I really did believe in like 8 Wave Serpents. And then they just get out Obsect, and it's like, oh, no, they just don't do anything.
This is probably the thing that I was the most wrong on. I told everybody that Eldar was fine, and that they were overreacting, and I was wrong. The reason I thought that they were fine is because I was doing Math Hammer and not playing the game. And when you play the game, they are not fine. They don't have the tools required. Craft World Eldar does not have the tools required to interact with the game the way that Marines and even Harlequins and Orcs and everybody is able to do. They don't have a thing that can go hold an objective and survive a turn well. They don't have that. Mm-hmm. And we had like, oh, we'll just do Dire Avenger spam. Well, that went away quick when we realized that there are specific matchups where the Dire Avenger spam just falls over. So I'm very excited for a Craft World Eldar book. I think they're one of the ones that's in the most need, because their book is all about shooting your opponent off the table, and that isn't what their army should play like. That isn't where their nuance should be. So that's my take on my favorite faction and their incredibly questionable place in the meta.
Yeah, I felt the same with Genestealer cults. I thought they were going to look really good in this meta because peace trading, and they've got the ability to use like Vect on Desperate Breakout, so you can stop people from getting out, and then they just can't hold objectives. at all for Toffee unless you play the Achilles Ridgerunner build. And that's just not something that I was looking at doing. So Genestealer Cult's just dropped off the face of the planet with the 9th edition changes, despite it looking like it could be good for them.
Everything
it was something that I really believed that they could be okay with, but no, they're just not.
They're just quite fragile. Yeah.
2 8th edition for 9th edition.
Yeah. Well, Genestealer Cult's a weird story too, because like they were really powerful, and then Marines came out and they just countered them hard in 8th. And then after that, GW said, well, now that they're countered by Marines, let's nerf them thoroughly. So Genestealer Cult are going into 9th were bad. They were bad at the end of 8th. They were not doing well at the end of 8th. But, okay. Anyone else want to share a thing they were surprised by before we move on to the next topic?
Harlequins existing and being a played army was bizarre to me because nobody played Harlequins before the edition, and they came out of nowhere, and everybody's playing Harlequins now. It's even if they're not necessarily like one of the best armies in the game, they are still good. You are still going to see them, and that's not something that happened before.
I could say that's not something I was wrong about. It's something I didn't even consider to have an opinion about.
Yeah. I had them as like a 6th or 7th best. I didn't have them in like the S tier. I thought that their White Dwarf was so good. I was like, they're going to be good. So I kind of put them just outside of like Marines, Custodes. I can't remember who else I had in like my top 5 at the time. But then like, no, it turns out they're just stupid good. And then they like tripled in play. They went from 1 to 2% of the meta to like 7% now. Mm-hmm. Like people are only playing Death Guard and Custodes more. I mean, Marines if you don't split them up by supplement. But yeah, they're absolutely everywhere. And they're wrecking it like across the board. Now maybe with the new Marine book, DA getting so good, BA getting so good, that's probably going to change. But up until now, like they have been very dominant. So
I have a hot take on Harlequins in our final section, so I'm not going to go too deep into Harlequins right now. But I do want to say that one thing I'm noticing is a lot of my Craft World Eldar players are playing Harlequins. I don't think I'm the only person who owns all of the elf armies. So I think that part of the reason why we saw the sudden ramp of Harlequins is the Eldar players are like, well, I can't play Drukhari or Craft World and win. Right, I think that's also part of why they boosted up so.
And they all already had 18 bikes, so it wasn't much more to add.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Mitch.
The thing I'm surprised most about is that AdMech aren't winning more stuff. They're doing really well numbers wise. Peter was saying in the Discord earlier, but they just aren't taking home wins, and I find that really interesting because man, it's such an appealing army with everything they got. But I think there's some hobby lag, and I think that like. If we had a more normal meta, we might see them catch on more, but they've just never had a chance to shine.
Yeah, I agree. Like AdMech to me looks now like Thousand Suns did before, like TJ, Jim, and like Matt Morrisoli started picking them up. Insane, like win rate, T-Whip, all those other things, but they haven't won an event yet. And I think it's going to take like a Rickard Nilsson or one of these top players that have like a more unique build than what people played in 8th to win something before this like kind of takes off. Plus coronavirus needs to stop being a thing so more people play. But but like they've got such good numbers. They're on the cusp. They've got a couple undefeateds, but they haven't had like that one player that's won an event. So
Okay. Let's move on to the next section, which is Chuck tells us his initial thoughts about playing Necrons. You've played 3 games now?
I think that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us about what you think of Necron. You don't need to do a Codex review. I mean, what are your thoughts on Necron so far?
Well, let's start with why I did that in the first place.
Okay.
I have Orcs and I have Chaos. And the point in time where I enjoyed Orcs the most was when I had 15-man Ludas and a 15-man Tank Bustas, and then a close combat army. And I liked the way that felt and I liked the way it played. And Chaos has been really frustrating because I can't get that long-range firepower to put behind my combat horde. So I looked at Necrons. I was like, well, I could probably get some good close combat with the stuff they're bringing out, and then I could put some good guns behind it, and I kind of recreate that style of army that I enjoy. So far, what I've learned is that doesn't work super great. Necrons don't have enough points to spread around to having all of those different kinds of pieces. But if you just use the warriors instead of that close combat front, and you just put an unkillable blob out in front with some guns behind it, it's a pretty serviceable army. So I've been just sort of experimenting down different aisles of like how to be durable and exist in the center table, and then shoot past where I'm existing to try to edit my opponent's army so that they don't have the tools to get rid of my durability. I feel like they're extremely good at that. They are like Death Guard levels of frustrating to get off the table. Trying to think what else is super important there. I'm actually sort of sour on their close combat. There's the new model range for GW. There's a 35-point model with a toughness of 4 or 5 with some kind of defensive ability and 3 wounds. Like, Necrons have 3 of those. Space Marines have Blade Guard, and Blade Guard are better. They're better than each of the variety. So it's just like we're behind the we can't run with them. So why try to compete? Let's do something different, right? I look at Warriors. I bring 3-4 Warriors in for that price, and it takes the Blade Guard forever to get rid of those guys, and I outnumber them on the objective. So then it's like, oh, this is a better choice for me. I'm looking forward to being proved wrong in that regard because I love the model range, like the Scorp Deck Destroyers, stuff like that. I would be really happy to do the modeling on them, but I feel like Warriors are really where it's at.
I've seen some interesting lists done with like 15 Wraiths, just putting them in the midboard with OBSEC and then backing them up with shooting. That
they evaporated
quite strong.
In a round and a half.
Okay, that's pretty rough.
That's what I mean. Like the Blade Guard are better, and then Inceptors, and it's just like, whoop, there they go.
How many did you have? 18? How many Wraiths did you have? You had 15 in the game? Okay,
18 is irresponsible because then you get your blast on the 6-man, and they evaporate faster.
So we played a game of the John Lennon's current White Scar list against the Necron close combat army, and the Wraiths did not last through the second turn. 15 of them. Just there was no.
Colin was very cagey about making sure I couldn't engage one with multiples, and then he was also careful about making sure the Apothecary was nearby to heal a guy back up, making sure to use a CP to keep the Blade Guard in it, so I could never do a crippling amount of damage to the Blade Guard unit, and it could always go back from like, I got it down to 2, now it's 3, now it comes back into combat with me, that sort of thing. And I never got enough out of it. Now, a bunch of Warriors with Gauze Reapers just shoots into the Blade Guard and kills a bunch, and then he's that same position, but now I'm outnumbering him. So I'm getting the points while we resolve this instead of him getting the points while we resolve it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of just what I was doing that.
They did easily kill the 3 attack bikes. They had no problem. They had no problem doing that.
They chew through things without invulns.
Yeah.
But I don't see a Space Marine army that isn't using Blade Guard for their linebackers, right? Like, so and Space Marines are one of the most popular things. I feel like that's going to be a constant source of something for me to solve.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Any other thoughts about Necrons?
They are super cool, and I really like the model line. And the Silent King has, I think, literally thousands of pieces.
Nightbringer or Silent King in the army?
What's that?
No, I think Nightbringer's is an ad. No, that's one of the things that we were talking about would be really helpful in the game I just played. We were talking about is even just having a Transcendent. Like I'd spend the 2 CP to swing through the invulns. Would make a big difference. But no, I was trying to get as much of
so just neither of the 2 big pieces.
Fair enough. No, those. The Silent King will be a part of it going forward. I think if you're doing Warriors, his buffs to core are incredible, and then he himself he's a monster. So I think it'll do well. The C'tans, I played one game with him, and they did great. They ate through a bunch of attack bikes. They done a bunch of mortal wounds, and they pulled a bunch of Terminators out of position in order to try to kill him. And he got got his points. I don't actually know if it's worth the 80-something points to upgrade to a named C'tan. You're already getting so much value that's similar out of an unnamed one. But I'm I think in the minority of that opinion.
Well, your balanced list with the C'tan against the Dark Angel, Blade Terminators, and basically Terminators walking up the table. That was a much closer game. That was a game where I was actually struggling early, and then I managed to pass you on the 5th turn by getting onto your objectives with the Blade Guard. In fact, if I hadn't made that final charge, I don't think I win. So that was a very close game. The
It
White
came down to a
Scars
charge,
versus all close combat list was like, that wasn't a game. That was...
Yeah, White Scars are very good at beating other combat lists. It's what they're best at, unfortunately.
The frustrating is I had the move 6 to start with, and then everything moving, like 10, 12 with the +1. I brought the battle to Colin right at the beginning. I denied him center of table, and the thought was, I'll do as much damage as I can to him before turn 3, before he gets his +1 damage. Well, he'd finished killing my army on turn 3. He didn't actually need the +1 damage to finish me off.
The other issue with that is there's always the stratagem to put yourself into Assault Doctrine, which means that the one square Blade Guard that gets in can always still be 3 damage, which against Wraiths or anything like that is just horrible. Yeah.
He didn't even use that. Didn't turn out to be necessary. Because the Wraiths kill a Blade Guard, and then the Blade Guard pops back in. And it's like nothing happened.
The White Scars list has a CP problem. It doesn't have very many, so I don't know that I would have been able to do that. But
yeah, I don't think you needed to. Actually, I think if you had, it would have been worse for you.
Yeah.
Because just using the CP to reroll your saves was such value.
Yeah. The best stratagem. Rerolling the messed up die roll. All right, so that's our some info on Necrons. If you want to see more of Chuck's thoughts on Necrons, he's going to play something with the Silent King, is the idea, at the Tiny RTT. Just to go back to that, for those that are joining us late, we're going to do a 4-person round-robin tournament, and we're going to stream 1 game from each round. We're actually going to let our listeners pick which game from each round is going to be on stream. But the lists are Necrons, Harlequins, Slaaneshi Demons, and White Scars. So there's going to be some punching. That's for sure.
Yeah. Do I have the most guns?
Oh, probably, yes.
That's weird.
Well, Harlequins have a lot of guns.
Maybe the Quins, yeah.
Harlequins have a lot of guns.
Yeah.
I just am excited that I'm not bringing vehicles.
So, I have 60 guns, which I think is more models than they have.
Now?
Not as much as I thought they were going to when they were like, hey, they can shoot in combat now. And it's like, oh, great. And then everyone's like, no.
Well, they said that, and then they put blast on every big weapon, and none of them can fire in combat. So
that's true. And like John Lennon and I had quite the debate about whether Haywire going blast was good or bad. And I really dig it. Having played Harlequins a bunch in 9th, man, do I like that they have blast on those Haywire guns.
It wouldn't have mattered for the bikes because they wouldn't have been able to fire in combat anyway.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point.
They're not vehicles, so it's only upside for them. It's worse on the Void Weaver, I guess, if anyone's running those. But nobody's running those, so.
Yeah, well, that blast on the bikes makes a massive difference into like the Slaanesh Demon and the Orc matchup.
I think
to the point where I think it makes a difference on whether the list can hang or not.
I think the most fun game I've played of 9th was that Harlequins versus Orcs game we played, Chuck, where we're just dancing around the table looking at each other, and then we slammed into each other. That was great. But I killed so many boys at range, right, with those Haywire bikes.
Yeah.
Okay.
They do good work.
Yeah, they do. All right, so Mitch is back, and we will now go into the...
Sorry about that. I had to sell some hardware to some Ukrainians.
Okay.
That's not a euphemism.
Did you get plutonium for your time traveling?
Yeah. No. I just sold some Ukrainians a tub and some like actual hardware for a shower.
Okay. Weird.
You demystified it. It's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
Is this a Breaking Bad situation?
Is there any like battery acid to go with that tub, or?
No. It's an acrylic tub. That'd be really not great.
Everybody's trying really hard to make this funnier than it is, and Mitch is just like, no.
No.
This will not be funny. Did you make it through the conversation without doing a bad Ukrainian accent? Because that's important. People don't want you to do accents, mimic their accents.
No, yeah. I have family from Ukraine. I can do a good Ukrainian accent and a bad one, but I did neither.
Yeah, I don't think they wanted to hear either. Okay.
No, they were nice.
Here's our next segment. It's called Colin's Hot Takes. It makes me wish that we had little jingles in between our segments. Maybe that someday we'll grow big. We'll become a big podcast, and we'll have those.
We'll have a soundboard
Peter until he sings.
Peter, would you like to sing a jingle for Colin's Hot Takes?
Not like this. Val always does the jingles on Stat Center, and I always just sigh.
And tolerate.
Yeah.
Someone asked me one time, what's Peter's role on Stat Center? And I said, tolerate.
It's true.
I'd have said everything, but...
I mean, also true. I used to write the script and do all of it, but now that we wing it, I don't have to do anything except everything.
Just tolerate.
Everything. So
you're still doing everything, just less of it.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, we have a Patreon group. I know everybody has a Patreon group and everybody has a podcast, but our Patreon group is special. For $5 a month, you get into our Patreon group, and it is a Discord and a Facebook group that we don't use, but we do have one. But I don't remember the last time someone posted there. We're all up. We're in Discord. We have a ton of channels, lots of conversations going on. There's lots of on-topic stuff and lots of off-topic stuff. I believe one of the most used channels is the pet channel, where people post pictures of their pets and discuss them. There is a lot of conversation going on in there. One of the things that happens is the general areas of 40K discussion grind to a halt sometimes. And so I read about trying to keep communities going, and they said, bring semi-unpopular opinions, drop them in, and leave. And I started doing that a few months ago. Sometimes I didn't believe the thing I was saying. Sometimes I did. But especially in the COVID chat, it always got the chat going. Especially in the COVID chat. We have a special COVID chat that's for people that want to talk about the real world, so everybody else can ignore it. That's what the COVID chat does. So, it occurred to me that there's been lots of these, and as we've been playing 9th edition, I'm realizing how little I understood it at first, and how, as we get further and further into it, I'm really beginning to grasp what I think of the game. And I, more so than any other part of 9th, the last week I've been talking a lot to my friends about what 9th edition is like. And so I've developed a list of 15, we're not going to do all 15 today, but 15 Colin's hot takes. These are opinions I have that are strong opinions that could be completely wrong. But they're opinions that I have, and I'm willing to change them, which makes me different than almost every voter in America. I am willing to change my opinions. So maybe I'll be convinced differently. The funny thing here is I was raised by a father who taught my brother and I that you have to have an opinion on every topic. It's important. Even if you don't know about it, you need to learn enough to have an opinion. So it amuses me. So I've come up with 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mitch, pick a number.
Lucky number 7.
1 through 5.
Oh. I thought you said you had 15.
Oh, I wish. I wish this was a thing.
I did pick which 5.
Oh, sorry. Fine. 3.
Okay. Number 3. Number 3 is disparity. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share my hot take, and then you guys are going to tell me if you agree or disagree and why. I believe that the game is there's a lot of tournaments right now, so it doesn't matter that much, but I believe that the game has more disparity between S tier and B tier, if you want to call them that, than it has in a long while. I think that there are certain armies that have all the stuff they need to succeed in 9th, and the vast majority of the rest of the game is in the same boat. I saw Art of War's breakdown, and to me, it's more, that breakdown should be more like, are you playing Deathwatch, Harlequins, I might get this list slightly wrong, White Scars, Salamanders, or like one other thing, or are you playing everything else? That's how the rules look to me, and how the games look to me. I've been watching a bunch of battle reports lately. It's how it looks to me, is that it's like, there's like 5 or 6 factions that are amazing, there's maybe 2 or 3 that are good, and then everybody else is the same. Craftworld Eldar and Tyranids and Deathwatch, and there's just this slew of stuff that's kind of in the also-ran category. And I think...
So you said Deathwatch in your list of S tier, and then Deathwatch again, so I'm guessing you meant Death Guard?
Death Guard and S tier, yeah.
Okay.
So I think what we're having is that some people have codexes, and some people have rule hangover from 8th, like Harlequins, that makes them really good. But I think that we're at a point now where the Marine Codex in particular has only emphasized disparity, and we have to get other people codexes now to get the game back to a state where more things could potentially win. Who wants to chime in? Who wants to agree or disagree with my hot take?
I'll take this one. I think you are pretty much spot on with that. There are the ST armies and the A and B tier codexes. The codexes are worse in the lower tiers. They are having to push into very hyper specialized builds, or maybe even only one build. Like we've seen the Gaunt Carpet list work and do well at the Norman Brooks GT down in Brisbane. And that's one build for Tyranids. You've seen Achilles Ridge Runners for Gene Stealer Cults. We've seen the Orc Horde build and maybe the Buggies build. And they all have one build that can maybe hang with the best. And that's only if it goes hyper specialized and if it has a run of luck. Whereas you've seen with Sisters of Battle, Death Guard, Custodes, Marines, they can kind of just throw whatever they want on the table. As long as it's a cohesive list, it'll be as good as those lists. And I think that's an issue, and it shows that there's not enough depth in the other books. And that's kind of where the disparity is that you could only really play the lower tier books one way if you want to even have a chance. And you can beat the best lists with those builds, but it's not consistent, and it's not whatever you want from the build. It's, did you happen to have this build for that codex?
I believe that's normal for what I call the half edition. 8th edition wiped the table and said, here's the indexes and new points, and everybody gets a new army all at the same time. 9th edition is a half edition because everybody keeps your codex, keep your stuff. Here's the new set of rules you're playing with. What that does, in my experience, is it creates these zones where people scour through their old rules and they look for something that really sort of is aberrant to the way their list was intended to work. It wasn't something that was written in. It was just, this is what I could make do with what's left over. And then you have to play that while you wait for a codex to come along to let you play the edition kind of in the new world. So to me, this is normal, what I would expect from this point in time. But I wholeheartedly agree as well.
Yeah. I think we have an S tier that's like 4 or 5 codexes, particularly after the Space Marine release we just had, because I think that even furthered the disparity. And then we've got like an A tier that is functional, like Innes said, where they can run just about anything cohesive, and they'll give it a go. And then there are probably only 3 or 4 armies that can make a list work. Like Orcs have been extremely successful with Goth Horde, but that's it. Like Buggies died real early once people started getting more and more elite, and Eradicators exist. So Buggies died. But like Goth Horde consistently puts out results, but it's the only thing that's putting out results for Orcs. And then like Tau have nothing. Tyranids have Gaunt Carpet, which has done one thing, and like I'm sure like if you were a really good Gaunt Carpet player, you can do well in a GT just because people don't build for 200-300 models.
Well, Goth Carpet, right?
Goth is basically the same, yeah. 120,
it's like
120 boys rather than 240, but yeah, same idea.
And some leadership mitigation, and you're done.
Yeah. But then like Imperial Knights, they've had one successful list that used Cerberus Raiders to go along with them, and even then, like it was like one event, so I really think it's a one-off. Thousand Sons have nothing. Raven Guard just disappeared. Chaos Space Marines, they've had like one success with Noise Marines, otherwise they don't exist. Guard basically don't exist other than that Liam Hackett like Guard Carpet, but with a couple tank commanders in the back. Like it's a rough scene for the bottom tier, and it's been that way since the last Space Marine Codex. It's just when 9th started, I think we had like this brief foray into 7 or 8 of books were doing very, very well, and now it's slowly kind of concatenating down to this 4 or 5 excellent codexes, and then a bunch of also rans.
And you'll notice also in those ones that are pulling themselves up, they're all going Horde.
Yeah, or like in the case of Custodes, because they're going with like a Alpha Strike almost build, and that's really
like 15 models. That's all you need.
Yeah,
that's so many for Custodes.
It really is.
Somebody in the chat says the Florida boys are claiming to have some spicy GSC tech on their latest pod. Have you heard that? And I'm like, well, those are my good friends I talk to regularly, and the fact that I don't know that makes me mad. So I will know that within an hour of this podcast ending, because that's not okay. Maybe they don't want me to know. That could be. However, I was one of the people that got read in on the Breviathan. I did know about that, so he explained it. John London explained it to me, and I was like, oh, okay.
Oh no.
I was like, literally, he's like, you don't sound excited. I'm like, why would I be excited about this? Anyways, I digress. I think we heard from everybody on the hot take except Mitch. Agree, disagree, Mitch?
I think that there's 2 things going on here. There's a new edition and there's COVID, right? So we have a whole bunch of core rules interactions that are all completely different. So every single unit in the game operates differently. And at the exact same time, most people can't play. So we have normally at the beginning of an edition, there's a lot of experimentation. There's a lot of really going after it. And obviously we've seen some of that. But it's slowed down so much, because of the lockdowns and because of everything else, that I think that we're really seeing a meta evolve at kind of a glacial pace. Which is weird because we're having books like thrown at us like so quickly that it's going to feel like the rules just keep changing. But we aren't as a community getting the reps to really see where everything's at and see what will and won't kind of be that broken thing that was in a forgotten codex that'll take off for a while. We see a little glimpses here and there, but there's just not enough games being played to really see a lot of those more subtle dynamics that happen in a meta play out. And that takes away, it leaves us with a much more, I wouldn't say flavorless, but there's so much less data and there's so many fewer games being played that we're not seeing as much experimentation and creativity as we normally would at this point in the edition.
All right.
So that is a huge contributor to the disparity. I think that a lot of those books are struggling and are going to continue to struggle. But how much they're struggling is in part that the people who really want to make those factions work aren't just able to get the reps in to maybe be like, hey guys, we do have a build.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Yeah, it's possible.
Let's go to the next hot take. Peter, do you want to hear about Harlequins, Math, Castling, or Chaos?
Let's talk Chaos.
Okay. This is a hot take I've had for a long time that has been refined. Over the how long have I been playing again? 3 years? 4 years? Over that time, Chuck has brought 100 different Chaos lists to play against me. Let's say 100. It's probably not that many, but it's more than any other faction you play, right, Chuck? That's fair, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And I've also played against Chaos extensively at tournaments. I've also played against Dark Angel players, but there's a joke there somewhere. I've played against Chaos a ton, okay? And I've actively tried to help Chuck win. I have actively tried to help him build lists. I've spent a lot of time on that. I believe that Chaos is a fundamentally broken faction. I think that they have been written poorly, and they have been written into a corner. I think that when you put a Chaos army on the table, even now, Death Guard's good, I get that. You put a Chaos army on the table, I don't play Chaos, and I can tell you what they're going to try to do. And if your opponent knows what you're going to try to do before you do it, you better do it really well, like Marines are. I'm going to have a death ball, it's going to go to the middle of the board, I've got a bunch of stuff on the periphery, try to stop me. That's Marines, right? Chaos can't telegraph what they're doing to that degree and be successful. And I think that's a fundamental problem with the way the rules are written. And what I was struck by, as I was thinking about this the last few days, they aren't, the way people talk about this is Blood Angels versus Chaos, Space Wolves versus Chaos, Imperial Guard versus Chaos. But that isn't what it is, right? All that is that Chaos tends to be souped more often. That's all that is, right? In actuality, all of the Chaos books are equivalent to all of the Imperium books. And when you think of it that way, it's shameful that there's this many Chaos books with this little variance in what you actually see that's competitive. And I asked some people to do counts of books before this, and I didn't get the numbers together. But I know there's more Imperium books, but it's still a good example because Eldar has a tiny amount of books in comparison, and Tyranid/GSC have an even smaller number. And then you have all the mono factions. So out of all of these books, we don't see variance in the competitiveness, and I think that's because they've actually designed Chaos badly. And I think that Chaos needs an overhaul to ever be something that's going to have any sort of variance as to what's good. Hot take. Chuck, do you want to go first since Chaos is your baby?
Yeah,
and I know they don't play. I know they don't play the way Chuck wants them to play either.
Yeah, I think if you just take 60 Necron warriors and the Silent King, you have a really good core. Oh, sorry, Chaos. Yeah, no. I put them away.
Okay.
I struggle with them through 8th, and a lot of the time I thought I wasn't getting it. And I finally just come around to actually, no, I'm actually better off with a lot of different, I had way more success with my orcs because they functioned with what they were doing. With Chaos, it's about tricking your opponent And even if I listen to a ton of people talk about chaos, and they all talk about, I put myself in this position, I wait till my opponent makes a mistake, and then I launch into them and I do this damage to them. And it's like, well, I play with Colin. Like, he makes that mistake, he's never going to make it again. So what's my game plan here? Pull all my tricks in one game, win that game, and then just never win another game? Like, it's not.
Retire after that game.
Yeah. You just walk out, you're like, I'm 1-0 as of yesterday.
In case that wasn't bad enough, we often are the final table at a tournament together.
Yes. I have a lot of 2nd through 4th place finishes that are, I went through the tournament doing really well, and then got to the last round, and I was like, oh, never mind.
I think personally, Chaos are a faction that's held together by bad overlapping keywords, warp time, and whatever thing is broken at the moment. And that's all Chaos really has going for it, is they've got the unkillable chicken and Nurglings, right? It's a list, but it's not interesting. At previous times, they've had Abaddon and Cultists. They've had Possessed with whatever was broken at the time. They've had...
Which was never good. Sorry. Go ahead.
Which was fine and an interesting list, at least.
It was fine and an interesting list. I'll give you that.
It was how you could play Chaos in a Marine meta, so I mean...
Double tapping obliterators, whatever you want. Like, pick a mechanic, it's probably been broken in Chaos. But nothing in Chaos can be good because of the way that their overlapping keywords work. If something's got Nurgle, it's got like 4 codexes worth of buffs available to it. The same thing for Chaos Space Marines or Khorne or whatever. And then Warp Time exists, so everything is twice as fast as it should be. So nothing can be good, right? You can't have Magnus be good, because if he is, and he moves 8 inches turn 1 and charges you, it's not a fun game.
Well, and it's also, like, the things you listed were not arming strategies, they were combos.
Yeah, exactly. It's a combo.
And that's what the faction is right now, and it's like, why is it this? So...
we spend a lot of time talking about how sad the world is for Tyranids, but I would rather be a Tyranid player than a Chaos player.
At least there's hope for Tyranid players. Maybe they'll screw up our codex again.
Right. Well, we did only have the one combo in us from 8th edition for Tyranids.
I mean, I got like 8 years out of my Tyrants. I can't complain that much. Like 4th through 8th was a really good time to own 5/5 Tyrants.
Peter, I actually had sent you a message earlier. I don't know if you did it, but I was curious about. Did you put the statistics together?
For like just Imperium versus Chaos generic?
Yeah.
Yeah. So pre the Marine Codex for 2019, January through to August, essentially. Right. So Chaos had a 53% win rate against Imperium.
Okay.
And then afterwards, it was about a 48 after Marines.
Okay. I was curious about the difference between does the Imperium superfaction win more than the Chaos superfaction? That was the actual question I was trying to ask.
Yeah, and currently, yes, but barely. And that's a lot of that is because Chaos Demons are like extremely good right now from just a pure numbers perspective.
Okay. Fair enough.
Even outside of GTs, like when we pull RTT data, they've got like a 65% win rate in RTTs right now. It's one of the highest, because like you guys said, everything you guys said is true. Like they're a combo faction generally, or they have something that's broken. So you've got Chicken, which just basically gets you 15 to 30 secondary every game. There's very few armies that can even deal with it, so it's just going to do what it wants. Nurglings are fantastic. Beasts of Nurgle are good. And then if you go the Slaanesh route and you have enough terrain, you're just going to win if there's enough terrain. Slaanesh is just going to beat almost any army it goes up against if there's enough terrain that it can 2 turns out of you. So
yeah. The Demon Book is probably the single biggest winner of purely the 9th edition changes, but it's not like it was designed for it. This is an accident of a codex. This is what we were talking about earlier, where it's an aberrant, but it's just on a codex level.
Yep.
It's not been designed for this. It's just happened by mistake.
It's pointed very aggressively. It's not that it's good. The Demon Codex gives me on this whole rant about. I think it's the most bland codex in the game.
Yes.
It has no flavor.
Which is hilarious, considering it's supposed to be representing 4 different gods of chaos. You think you'd have flavor everywhere.
And if you want to play a mono faction, you have by far the least number of stratagems available to you. of anybody. There's a whole bunch of things about that really bother me, but that point of like, I think it's good right now because the points that are put to it for the addition are wrong. Right? It's getting to have more per point than anybody else. It's not that it has a good strategy. It's just like, go for it.
Nurglings, Beasts, and Keepers are probably underpointed, and the Lord of Change is just uninteractable with in a way that's not interesting or healthy. It's cool, but it's not healthy. It's a codex that needs a fundamental rewrite in the same way that Tyranids and Genestealer cults do. They're just not codexes that work. It just doesn't work in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm really happy with the stuff they've done recently for armies because I feel like they've made armies work like the flavor says they should work. I think they've really hit that nail really well just recently. And I'm excited to get some Chaos books, and I'm hoping for basically a new faction.
Every Codex Sisters onward's been great, in terms of pure interest. I'm looking forward to the Forge book just to see some direction, because we'll get a direction on what the direction is going to be on a bunch of factions. We'll see some Tyranid data sheets, we'll see some Eldar data sheets, we'll see some Death Guard data sheets, and we'll get to see this is roughly what this faction is going to look like when we get a codex for them, and that's going to be really interesting and really cool to have.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I would say, by the way, that if you guys haven't heard me talk about this before, I don't want to take credit away from Jim Vessel and TJ Lanigan because they played it way better than everybody else did, but the list that they dominated with was accidentally good as well. That list existed before ITC changed their mission format, and when Ynnari existed, and Ynnari would beat them, and so you didn't see it winning tournaments. Ynnari went away, ITC changed their tournament packet, and it massively benefited that list, and that list started wrecking people. That's not an interesting way to write an army, and that's the most dominant thing we've seen. So,
and it wasn't that great in ETC missions,
no,
just to speak from a foreign perspective, because it was different. It was still fine. It was still a good 4-1, 5-0 if you played it well army, but it wasn't what it was in the States where it just won everything, because the missions just weren't quite right for it.
I played it 8 times in tournaments, and I only lost to it the one time that Jim Vessel played it against me. And I was playing Tau, and it was my first tournament with Tau. It was a really bad situation.
Probably the worst matchup you could ever draw in 40k.
Well, and we both knew it. And then I moved wrong on the first turn, and I told him, "Oh, I just messed up my entire game plan." And he just laughed, and we just had fun and played the game. It was fine. There's a question here that I don't actually want to waste the time on, but I do want to read it out loud for everyone's benefit. And it's, what is the best shooting army for Chaos? So,
I would shoot at them with Imperial Guard.
I mean, with a Castellan, right?
Chaos is not a shooting army. That's actually one of their fundamental issues, is that they don't have good, reasonable long-range shooting.
The best shooting is Death Guard drills with grenade bombs, and that's depressing. So,
how about the Mephitic Blightholler list with like the GUO? That's cute. That shoots a lot of bounty
that's cute and keyword overlap, right? Come on, it's not a shooting list. That's an accident. Okay.
I mean, it shoots though. It shoots a lot, and they come back from the dead.
Shall we continue to our third hot take?
Sure.
Okay. I am a little disappointed that so far I have not landed on a hot take that anyone disagreed with. So let me go with the one that I think people might disagree with.
All right.
Harlequins. They are good. They are not great, and we're going to see that over the next 3 months. I think that their win percentage, I'm calling it, Peter, their win percentage is going to go down steadily over the next 3 to 6 months. Here's why I think that. I've been watching battle reports of good players play Harlequins, and I've been, like, there was a game of John Lennon playing White Scars and Index Harlequins, which I think was the most educational for this point, but I watched a bunch of the Silent King game, where admittedly Siegler ruled incredible, and then I watched a few battle reports from some other people that aren't the Art of War guys, and I also played a bunch of Harlequins. Harlequins are functioning so well in part because people don't know how to play against them. Their rules are complicated. They have a bunch of janky stratagems that are weird, like 12-inch moves and pile-ins in weird directions and jump back in transports, and they have a bunch of really strange teleport over all 3 characters and grab all of your secondaries and then teleport them all back. Like, they have a bunch of janky tricks that once you know how to play around is just not that good. With no new Harlequin rules in the immediate future that we've seen previewed, and other armies getting propped up in combination with people getting reps against them, I think we're going to find that they are being propped up by lack of knowledge against them, and they're just going to get worse and worse as we
And
continue
they're a paper
on.
tagger.
I think what you just said is exactly what you just said about chaos.
Okay, explain.
It's a whole bunch of chaos. It's a whole bunch of combos and bullshit. And as soon as your opponent understands what you're going to do, you don't have any choice to change your plan. So they're going to be able to play around you.
Mm-hmm. And I think GSC in 8th edition has had that to some degree as well. I think when GSC first came out, it dominated more than it did later. In part,
even when it was better later.
Yeah, right. Because people didn't have any idea what to do against it. I played GSC games where people are like, "Oh, I've never played against GSC before," in all of 8th edition, and then I'd explain what the tricks are.
Oh.
But like, Chuck, we had that game where the Hand Flamer bomb came in and cleared an entire screen, and then the acolytes all went past it, and you're just like, okay, right? But once you knew about that, it wasn't as bad. So, anyways, I'm talking too much. Anybody want to disagree with my?
I'm going to disagree with you on that one.
Excellent.
For the same reasons that we just talked about GSC. I think that as players get more reps with Harlequins, they will drill down into the tricks that are worth using and the tricks that are hard to deal with. They'll move away from the janky stuff with the teleporting your solitaire and your characters around for 12 CP to score your 30 secondary points on Linebreaker and whatever the hell else you're taking. I think we'll see people move into the consistent options that are hard to deal with. They'll get better at using them and when to use them, and then also have the understanding of this is when I use the janky stuff, the tricks that are not consistent, but I know when I can use them. My opponent might have a plan to counter them, but I can plan around the ways they're going to counter me. And I think we'll see Harlequin players get better and better as time goes on. As long as the way that the new books come out aren't aggressively hostile to them, I think we'll see the best Harlequin players maintain their win rate. I think the bandwagoners, will see them fall off, which will probably result in a win rate fall. But I think the best Harlequin players, like we've seen Mike McConkey in Northern Ireland and some other players here who have been doing really well with Harlequins, playing them really well, and I think they're just going to keep getting better with the faction because it rewards skillful play, and I think that's the most interesting thing about them right now, is how much they can do and how much they don't have to do it. But you can get by on just Harlequins are 4 attack models that can have a 2 damage weapon on the charge or a D3 plus 1 damage weapon on the charge, and you can have like 400 fusion pistols. There is a certain baseline that faction is never going to be that bad this edition because of just the things it can do.
Mm-hmm. I can't disagree with anything Ennis just said. Yeah. I just can't.
I think it's a really interesting idea that you said you feel like there's more depth in that faction, that what the faction that we're measuring now isn't what we're going to be seeing in 6 months, that people are going to sort of evolve it. I think that's really interesting.
We saw a lot of Genestealer Cult lists right at the start of when the book came out, and then 5 months later everyone was playing the 20 Aberrants list, the Muscle Beach list, because that was the one that worked. The other ones were still good and they could still beat people and they still had a higher win rate because, well, people got used to dealing with Genestealer Cults and they built to beat Genestealer Cults, so yeah, it lost percentage points, but it was still a better list. And a player like Nick or John Lennon could still play it better than they ever could the original lists. And I think we'll see that over time with Harlequins, as long as the meta doesn't become aggressively hostile with like mortal wounds out of everyone to deal with their 1 wound models. Because -1 to wound and -6 inch range just deals with a lot of armies right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the people in the chat is pointing out that there are a lot of armies that just plainly don't have the tools to deal with Quintrix, even if they know they're coming. I think that's a fair point that I hadn't considered. There's a bunch of armies that just deploy, like, I played a game with Kraken Genestealers against a good friend, and we deployed, and he said, well, I'm going to lose because I literally have no idea how to stop double Kraken Genestealer, right? Like, he's like, my army, I just don't know how to do it. So go ahead and beat me, and then we'll move on with the day. And I suppose that will still be a thing for Harlequins. Mitch, thoughts on Harlequins? Or have you, they're not really your jam. Have you paid much attention to them?
No, I mean, I think that they're an interesting faction. I oddly enough, I lump them in with Custodes as far as factions go, where they have a lot of tricks. They rely on invos. They rely on, doing damage in very specific ways, and then reducing the damage they see and kind of controlling things, trying to engage on their terms because they, like, Custodes do that in a very different way, obviously with deep strikes and all kinds of different stuff, whereas Harlequins are just fast and have all kinds of janky tricks. But I think that what's going to happen basically for Harlequins is going to be similar to where I kind of look at Custodes. If lots of multi-wound, invul models become in vogue, then that's what people are going to beat, and that's bad for or going to build to beat, and that's bad for Custodes. If T3 bodies, even if they're hordes or whatever, become popular, that's really bad for Harlequins, right? And that's going to be the kind of the determining factor for if they're going to do well. Obviously, terrain plays a factor in that. But if everyone's coming to be able to kill, 100 and whatever boys or 200 gaunts, like they're still T3. They're still like 4 people is great, but you can only make so many of those. And so if all of a sudden massed fire and volume becomes in vogue again, then that's going to have an effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All of the upcoming codexes, though, are generally looking like they're elite codexes. We've got Death Guard, Blood Angels, Death Watch on the horizon. So it looks like the best builds are still going to be the elite builds, which Harlequins are good against as long as you don't lean too heavily into the bikes. I think the meta is going to play a part in whatever happens. A gun could come out that's just kill a Space Marine on a 2+, right? It could happen. It's unlikely. But it means that whenever we try to future predict, there's always an element of, we don't know what the Death Guard codex is going to have that they might just do mortal wounds at the backside, which murder the hell out of Harlequins, or have army-wide transhuman that means their fusion pistols do nothing. But stuff like Choreographer of War, the reroll to wound and combat bubble, is amazing against stuff like Inner Circle. That's a really powerful ability to have. It's never going to get worse than it is now. And I just think that means that there's always a certain amount of the tools that Harlequins have are going to be good for the game at the moment, as it's played.
Mm-hmm. Peter, did you want to say anything about this before we move to the next one?
I think we're good. I will add anyway because I like to hear the sound of my own voice.
Even though you don't like your voice?
No, I love it. But like you were saying with Gene Stealer cults, we never saw a regression to mean for Gene Stealer cults. They came out at like a 54% win rate. They stayed at a 53 to 54 basically until Marines came out, and then they got double nerfed into oblivion.
Right.
But their playstyle changed. So like Innes said, I think we're going to see the exact same thing here with Harlequins, because we're already seeing like the top players distill it down. Sure, they will still spend that 9 CP if you let them to pull off a ridiculous trick, but they don't need to against top players. I had that really awesome talk on Art of War with Malik Rubio in his foot Harlequin list, where he basically got rid of fusion boats completely. And it's a completely different way to play that exists and does very well in this meta. I mean, but like everybody else said, Harlequins are kind of a skew army, so there's always going to be that chance that a book comes out that says, I don't give a shit about your skew anymore because I can deal with Marines and deal with all of these 4+ invuln bodies. So
I would just say I'm supposed to be the elf expert on the show. However, I think that Innes's hot takes were better than mine on this. I would just say that Harlequins, to me, don't have nearly the variance and tools that a lot of other books have. They do have the foot army and then the boat army with fusion and the boat army without fusion, and all of those are functioning right now. But it seems to me that part of the reason that they're usually going to go 4-1 is this matchups that are going to be really hard for them. That's always been the case with Harlequins. And I think that as we see more and more rules come out, it's very easy to imagine that something will come out that they don't have the tools to deal with. They have really great tools, but they don't have the variance of tools other books have, is what I would say.
And I guess the other thing I'd add to that then,
sure,
there's really only like one faction that's doing well against Harlequins right now, and nobody's playing it.
What's that?
So, Drukhari. Drukhari, in their like 20 or 30 games they've had against Harlequins, they're dumpstering them because, mass poison shots, they'll do work, and they're fast enough that they can keep up. But most other armies just don't have it. They don't. They're either like 60-40 for Harlequins or 55-45. In the case of like Guard, it's like a 95% win rate for Harlequins. So like,
I don't think Guard can ever deal with the consolidate after you fall back stratagem. I just don't think Guard can do it. 6-inch movement models, and then tanks that are going to be stuck against buildings can't deal with that.
Yeah.
And that just means there's always a baseline level of win rate that this faction will have.
That means we're not using enough Torox Primes with AP1 Gatling.
Okay.
Is anyone ever using enough of those?
The meta has changed.
Hot take number 4. Hot take number 4 is that castling is dead. You cannot castle, and that is why Tau is terrible. And that is why other armies are struggling, and that's why people are struggling to adapt. A huge amount of the game in 8th edition was people castling. Even Double Spear Ynnari was a castle that the spears jumped in and out of until they were ready to wrap or engage. 8th edition was a huge number of armies that castled up in their deployment zone and shot at you and maybe had a little bit of extra tools to get recon. That fundamentally does not work at all in 9th edition. There is not an army I could think of that can sit in its deployment zone and win the game. Frankly, doesn't work, and that's why Tau is struggling so hard. They are a mobile castle, but they're a castle, and they're not mobile enough to deal with the level of shenanigans that other armies are dealing with. That's my number 4. Somebody says room temperature take. I'm sorry. I thought it was going to be good. If everybody just wants to agree with me, we can move on to the next take if everybody thinks it's lukewarm as well.
Castling is a deployment strategy.
What's that?
Castling is a deployment strategy. You can still deploy in a castle and then spread out from it as long as you're fast.
But you're not going to stay in a castle like you did in 8th.
You can have... You can still do like mini castles. Like you can have a Death Guard Terminator blob protected by a Foul Blight spawn that's unchargeable. That's still fine. You just can't have your entire army side now. You have to have tendrils to it now. You have to be able to reach out and get to other objectives and have parts of it elsewhere. You can do like so what you could call like a dispersed castle where you have something in the center and then a spread out bit on this side and a spread out bit on this side. They all trail back in for auras. You could kind of make it work. So you can still get the gameplay in a much less concentrated way. But yeah, you can't do this is my 6-inch diameter circle of Tau army. Come kill me or you lose. That doesn't work anymore.
Well, I think the important part is you can't exist in one place and expect to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
You have to spread out. I've tried to build lists with like 2 castles, that sort of thing. Like, you should want to start spreading in that direction.
I would say the only castle that's really survived is Call's Bouncing Castle. Because that only takes up about half of an army, and then you can have a bunch of really mobile cavalry and other things now that can work. Where Call and Onagers and one Scorpius and maybe you can go bots. There's different ways you can do it. Where Admech can still kind of castle, but they're about the only one, and you better have a lot of other mobile stuff. You better be bringing at least 15
have a shooting base. Yeah, you can still have a shooting base. So this is where my stuff is going to broadly sit. But in some objectives, you don't even get in some missions you don't even get an objective in your deployment zone to castle on. So you can't even score 15 points in those games without moving out. So it was going to be a dead strategy from the second we saw the missions and the deployment strategy. But people are still clinging onto it because it's a fun way to play because none of your stuff dies and that's fun, right? You get to play with all your stuff for 5 turns. Just not going to win money games.
All right. Anybody else have anything to say about the idea that castling is dead? I didn't realize it was going to be such a lukewarm take. I apologize.
Hey, 1 out of 5 ain't bad.
Right? Okay, so for the final one, I'll give you guys a choice. Do you want to hear about Math Hammer or do you want to hear about cheating?
Math Hammer?
Whichever.
You have to go to a tournament to have cheating, so there's no cheating.
Math Hammer, cheating.
Yeah, let's do Math Hammer.
Okay. 8th edition came out. I started playing. I didn't know that I was supposed to netlist and copy everybody else. I hadn't learned that yet about being a new player. And I used a calculator to build an Imperial Guard army. Actually, I used a spreadsheet, more specifically. And I took it to a major, and I won the major. Because I had outmathed all of my opponents. It required no skill. I had no good experience with the game. I built a better list than my opponents did, and I won a major because of it. That was 8th edition for lots of people, even as it continued on. You were able to make a list that was just so efficient that it just won. And there was lists like, there was numbers of Eldar lists like that. There was just like, I have all the guns, my guns are better, you can't get to me in time, you're dead. Vibro cannons with rerolls, right?
The Castellan, and then just the math of the CP battery that went with the Castellan.
Yeah. That's a good example too. And you had all of these gun lines that were just, I have super efficient guns. And what I'm finding is the exercise of how do I kill a Castellan with my entire army is useless now. I'm finding that as I build armies, Math Hammer isn't useful. It's not good to figure out what's the most efficient shooting unit. It's not important. You need to know what that unit has in its tool set. Is it fast? Is it durable? Can it redeploy? Can it do secondaries? There's a lot to it. I find that I literally have to play stuff on the table to have any idea if it belongs in my army. That part of that is a new addition, right? But in general, I'm finding that spreadsheets and math are just nowhere near as useful because of how much more interesting the game is. because there isn't step back and shoot. I've got to move around. I got to hold objectives. I got to play the game because of that. I'm finding that Math Hammer as a concept is just not, theory crafting the ultimate math is just not useful to me. Thoughts?
Well, Inceptors won the math battle, and we just move on and we do the other stuff now, right?
Yep.
Well, they did win the math battle, but they're also durable.
Fast.
You can deep strike them. They're fast, right?
Primaris, so they can
The apothecary can bring them back, or can he not?
Yeah. No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a Space Marine. Why wouldn't he be able to?
Oh, I didn't know if he was, because I'm new to Space Marines, and I didn't know if he's specific.
They're still just infantry.
Like there's the Dark Angels have rules where it's like Terminators and Ravenwing for anyways, it doesn't matter. So
math is for me useful to a point where you can say, am I taking a Basilisk or a Manticore for my backfield? Right? You can still use it. It's still a useful tool. You can still say, how many turns of average army firepower am I expecting to live through for a Horde army? Right? How many turns am I going to get on my Goth Horde? It's not you can't play for the same reasons as castling. You can't play the math army. It doesn't work.
Right.
You can't just run 6 Leman Russ Demolishers and expect to win the game.
Based on the comments and what Innes is saying, I'd like to clarify. I'm not saying math doesn't matter. Obviously, math matters when we're evaluating things. I'm saying that you can't make a list based on math, and you can't over-rely on math. That's what
there are so many intangibles that rely on ninth edition missions rely on. So many things with secondary choices. You can't run like the 6 Tau Commander list that's just mathy good because Assassinate exists, and Assassinate is very powerful. It just makes it so that options are harder because of intangible factors, like Colin said. Yeah, you're pushed in so many different directions by the missions and the way the game is that just simply basing it on one factor isn't enough. You have to consider all of them, and that's good. That's good for the list. You have to make opportunity costs and decisions in your list building.
Anyone else?
I was never very good at doing that work in the first place. But I am glad to hear that it's less valuable to others.
There's the perfect example of this. Iron Hand's Triple Repulsor Executioner. That is a list that is only math. There is no nuance to it. It is not hard to build. It is not interesting to play before it got destroyed, right? Yep. It is literally, well, I've run the math and they can't kill my tanks and I can kill their entire army. So I guess, and I've got Thunderfire, so I got indirect fire. I guess it's going to be fine.
The height of it is the Imperial Fist all no-look shooting list, right? You're literally saying, I'm going to carve this much of your army off on turn 1 and finish it on turn 2, so I win.
Yeah. I totally spoke over Mitch, and I feel bad. Sorry, Mitch. Go ahead, man.
Well, that's okay. I guess I always use Math Hammer a little differently. I always used it on how to evaluate individual units. You can because it's easy. Because I definitely early in 8th edition fell into the trap of the idea of I'll just do all the math and look how much stuff I can kill, and it's like, okay, but that's not necessarily going to win me the game if I'm not accounting for something. So I need to have a more rounded viewpoint of all of my units. What I think is really interesting in another chat I've been in is discussing Thundercab. They've obviously kind of come back into the spotlight, and everyone auto takes a shield and a hammer because that's just what we've always taken. But if you start to Math Hammer it out,
dual claw.
Lightning claws are better. They're just better. On almost any target you can possibly do, a lightning claw or a power fist, or a couple power fists and 3 lightning claws, any of those are 100% better than chain swords and a couple thunder hammers. And they aren't, and points wise, they're about the same. So Math Hammer definitely has a place for tuning your list, but that's where it is. And the other part of Math Hammer that you need to be doing now is associating points, secondary points cost with different units. If you're going to take that Psyker, you're associating that cost for that secondary. And that's where I think the Math Hammer has shifted in 9th, is that you have to have an idea of, okay, I know exactly what secondaries I automatically give up if my opponent is even awake. And I just need to incorporate that math into my game plan, and then using Math Hammer to fine tune the loadouts of units is kind of where I've ended up on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The Falcon.
I have nothing to add. This is everything that I believe.
Okay. Excellent. Well, perhaps somebody can answer for me the question from the chat. Why does Art of War, we're not them, so we don't know, but why does Art of War think Grey Knights are so good?
Because it's Siegler playing them.
Is that why?
I don't know. I don't really watch their games.
How about this? Are Grey Knights good? Does anyone know?
Grey Knights are fine. They have a decent win rate. They've won an event, a GT, a singular GT. Like, their numbers are okay, but barely anyone is playing them.
So my take on this is Grey Knights have become a really, like, if you're already going to have Psychers in your list, they've become a really great ally detachment where you're going to just take one blob of them that can invisibly, can shoot through walls, and that's their job. They provide good combat. Like, if you're, they're a great pairing with Guard or AdMech. Like, there are things you can do with them on their own. I haven't gotten to play them yet. I'm really excited. I think that there is more play there than what we're seeing right now, just due to them getting more wounds, right? Like, that totally changes the dynamic of them. However,
when they get the extra wounds, they don't have it yet.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying. I haven't played that yet, but when they get that makes a big difference. Hopefully, they're getting a new codex. They had mentioned that 2.5 years ago or something. But hopefully we get some updates. I think that there will be play there. I just think that right now the only thing I'd really want them for is maybe a squad of Terminators that are OBSEC to be able to hide in a place and just shoot out, and no one really wants to touch them because they're pretty killy, and no one can really deal with them. That's good. I like that.
I think they fall into the same problem I find. I would really like to be playing Zeech Demons, but guaranteed I'm giving my opponent 15 victory points in order to play this particular army. Feels really bad. And Psychers don't have much of a place.
Abhor the Witch and Assassinate are bad for Grey Knights.
Yeah, and it's just what do you... Yeah, I guess Grey Knights, if you pick both of those, it's
it's 8 points
are they really good enough to get over your opponent getting almost a guaranteed 45 secondaries? They have to be pretty amazing to get over that hurdle. So I think if you start looking at what can I do to my opponent on the table, that's fine, but you got to understand that there's some other hurdles in front of you.
I think that goes back to secondary is terrible.
Yeah, I hate it. I think it's really bad for the game, or it should only work on second characters.
Well, it shouldn't stack.
Yeah.
It does. I don't even think that's the issue.
I can't play Zeech Demons because I'm giving you 15 secondaries to start.
You can't have that secondary when there are armies where everything in the army is a Psyker. That's not fair.
Yeah.
So, that to me. I feel similarly about that I did to Reaper, right? Reaper was, are you playing against a Horde army? Congrats, here's points. That was Reaper in 8th edition, right? And because it was am I playing orcs? Well, orcs don't function in 8th edition without a bunch of bodies, so great, I'll max those points. It was not good design.
And Thin Their Ranks is really bad against everything except Guard.
It's really hard. It's really, there's very rarely that there's an army that Thin Their Ranks is a good choice against, in my experience.
Yeah, it's good against the 90 guardsmen and a bunch of tanks build, because you get 10 points for every tank you kill and 1 for every guardsman you kill. So you're kind of mixing on that. But against everything else, it's just bad. Mm-hmm. Even 120 orc boys, you can't. It's still 12 secondaries if you table them, right? Well, it's not a good deal.
It's 12 secondaries table, but it's probably 9 secondaries just for playing. So if you don't have a good third choice, it fits it nicely, right? It's not great, but it's always there and always available to your opponent.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's a fine secondary. I'm okay with people getting 9 to 12 secondaries if they take Thin Their Ranks against you, right? Because, well, it's very unlikely they're going to get 15 on it. It's sort of like them taking an even harder Scramblers.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, I think this has been great. I think this is one of our best episodes. That's what I think. So I think we've done a good job. I think we've been entertaining. I think the Colin's hot takes section got us talking, so that was good. That was a new thing to try. Maybe we'll do Chuck's hot takes at some point, or Mitch's hot takes. Mitch's hot takes would be really fun because Mitch.
We haven't talked about Space Wolves yet. We got rules previews. You're just teasing it out.
You weren't supposed to be here. We wrote the agenda without that in the agenda because you weren't supposed to be here.
But we got to talk about it a little.
Frostclaw Thunderwolf Lord with dual claw Frost Claws. They look real good.
I am 35 minutes past when I told my family I would be done. I literally have to go. I'm sorry. We will talk about Space Wolves in detail on the next episode. How about that? We can lead with them. We can take as much time as you want to talk about Space Wolves on the next one because I also like the Space Wolves. So We will talk about them. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, Mitch, you were not in the agenda.
That's
Mitch
okay.
wasn't supposed to be here. He ended up here anyways. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, those that watched us live. We really appreciate it. Everybody says they have the best listeners, so we have the best listeners.
We're just the only ones that are right about it.
There you go. That's exactly right.
Exactly.
What we'd like to do is we'd like to record every other week, and we'd like to pick a particular time we do it at so you guys can plan on watching us. So we're going to try to figure that out. But the next time you'll hear from us will be a week from Saturday when we're going to stream 3 games in our tiny 4-person RTT, which should be a great deal of fun. It is a reason for me to get my my White Scars, built in time. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much, Innes, for your debut on Biff Pod after being a listener for a long time. Appreciate
Thank you for having me.
Falcon, always a joy. Thank you so much for joining us and ignoring your family.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be back soon enough, guys. Thanks, everybody. Bye now.
See you later.
Bye.